Hi folks, I'm immigration attorney Greg McLawsen, managing attorney at Sound Immigration. Today is the 24th of March and I wanted to describe some coverage that came out today regarding certain policies passed by the Trump administration that implement the so-called extreme vetting procedures. So this happened back on March 15th, but we're just now seeing coverage of it. These memos weren't initially public. And if you go back to March 15th, this was actually right when the travel ban 2.0 was being dealt with. And we had a first wave of cables. Cables, by the way, are what the State Department, how the State Department refers to policy memorandum. So we had a March 15th cable that went out from Secretary of State Tillerson. And then right after that happened, the travel ban 2.0 was stopped by a federal court in Hawaii. So that meant the State Department had to go back and change some of the policies it was implementing. So we had this flurry of cables. There were 4 total. And what we saw today was coverage about, okay, when the dust settled, what did we have in terms of policy? And here's kind of the main points of what was left over. Remember that extreme vetting is a term that Trump coined during the campaign to describe the scrutiny that he was going to bring to bear on visa applicants. And we've been saying, basically, since he became president, that we anticipated there would be more or less across-the-board screening measures that would increase visa processing times and cause delay in cases. And what we're seeing now is basically that coming to fruition. Let's go through some of the provisions of the extreme vetting policy cable, and you can find an analysis of this also on our website, soundimmigration.com/Trump. So first, Trump says he wants every consulate chief to sit down with law enforcement and other agencies and come up with a list of populations that deserve extra scrutiny at that particular consulate's jurisdiction. So there are consulates all over the world, in every country. Some countries, in fact, have multiple U.S. consulates. And now each one of those consulates is supposed to come up with a list of populations that they define as heightened security risks. We don't know what those lists are going to look like, and they aren't going to be publicly available almost for sure. But we would expect that they would probably include those who have certain types of travel history, perhaps. So maybe people who traveled to the travel ban countries, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, etc. Certain political affiliations or group memberships might get you into those groups. So basically it's going to be characteristics that that consulate believes are going to indicate security risks. To be on the safe side, you might want to just assume that you are going to be in one of those groups and plan accordingly. How would you plan? Well, let's go on to the next item, which is what screening measures are going to be required for folks in these certain population groups. So if you are in one of these groups that's considered a heightened security risk, the policy cable lists additional information that the consulate might require from you. First of all, they might fire off a additional form of security screening request. That's something that's done outside of the consulate and would certainly cause additional delay. But also there at the consulate, they might ask you for additional information. And here's the information that they say they might request. Pardon me looking back and forth, but I'm going to my blog post here. They might request 15 years of travel history. So think about that. I travel a lot, almost every month, and I probably couldn't put together a travel list for where I've been in the past year, let alone 15 years. That's a lot. You might have cycled through 2 or 3 passports during that period of time. So good luck with that. You'd have to go back through your emails is usually how I do it with clients, looking at travel history in terms of itineraries that you've put together. Certainly you'd want to look at visa stamps in your passport. But you might, if you're a person who travels frequently, you might be looking at hundreds of trips over that 15-year period. That's a lot. They might ask for all names of siblings, children, or former spouses not listed on the visa application. Typically, the DS-160 or DS-260 is going to have a list of all of those individuals, but I guess not always. Address history. Address history might be requested for the past 15 years. So again, often you are required to provide your past 5 years address history, but for populations getting extra scrutiny, that might go back 15 years. That's tough. That could be very, very hard for somebody who's moved around a lot in military, or a student who's bounced around a lot of houses. But they've been instructed, the consulates have been instructed that they can request 15 years of travel history. Likewise, they can ask for your employment history for the past 15 years. That's going to include contact information for those employers and addresses of where the employers were located. The last item on the list is, I think, the one that folks are likely to find the most imposing and basically scariest, which is that they can request all of your email addresses and social media handles. It's not totally clear from the memo whether they are going to request access to the accounts or just that you reveal what your, for example, what your Twitter handle is and what your Facebook profile address is. It's not clear that they're necessarily going to request access into the email address, although who knows what assets they have to get that information anyway. But this means that you can expect, especially if you are in one of these suspect groups, you can expect for all of your social media profiles to be scrutinized by the U.S. consulate. So if nothing else, starting immediately, bear that in mind when you are making posts. And all sorts of things can be potentially of interest to the consulate. Certainly anything that indicates a security risk or criminal issue. But there are over 60 grounds of inadmissibility that touch on things like drug and alcohol use or certain types of illnesses. So if you're posting something that looks like you've been involved in drug or alcohol use, that could absolutely raise serious issues at the consulate. Okay, no backlogs. The policy cable says that despite requesting things like 15 years of address history, we are not supposed to see additional delays at consulates as a result of the cable. I'd say good luck with that. Consular officers are told that they can expect up to 120 interviews per day. Greg Chen with the American Immigration Lawyers Association does the math and says that's about one interview every 5 minutes. So I don't know how the consular officers are supposed to get through all of the information that they already review at visa interviews, plus 15 years of address history and all of your social media accounts, etc. How are they going to get through all of that in 5 minutes? We don't see it happening, and we expect that for sure this is going to require additional time for these cases to be reviewed at the consulates. They're not going to get more consular officers, so it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we're probably going to see additional delays across the board for visa applicants. And the policies that we're talking about here are for all visa types. There are millions of visas issued each year, and it's not just some visa categories that are going to get this review. It'll be all applicants. So that's where we stand now. I think we're probably not going to see much more information revealed about how consulates are defining these suspect groups. We don't know how long it's going to take them to identify the groups anyway. Supposedly they're sitting down now with law enforcement agencies to come up with a list of the groups. It'll remain to be seen if those lists get leaked out to the public. I guess it's possible because there's a lot of discontent in the State Department. There are many, many Foreign Services officers who are concerned about what they're seeing at U.S. consulates. So maybe you get a situation where a disgruntled State Department employee leaks one of the lists. That would be interesting, but I wouldn't count on it. So I think what we're probably going to be advising our clients at Sound Immigration is to plan in advance for the possibility that you might be requested some or all of the information that we've been describing here. So yeah, you are not required currently with a DS 260 or 160 visa application to provide your 15-year address history, but we're going to ask people to get that information ready in case the consulate requires it. So feel free to jump into our blog if you have questions, soundimmigration.com/Trump, or put them into the comments here on the Facebook page. Take care, everybody, and we'll update you when we know more.